Do you remember Emmalyn? She used to help us make videos a few years ago to teach children all around the world how to grow their own food no matter where they live. We're going to do our own special lesson today. This is all tied to the 4th grade curriculum. I looked it up. I actually have a master's degree in educational psychology now, which I didn't have the last time you and I worked together. So now I'm an expert on how to teach people. I can go to court and talk to the judge as an expert and say, this is how you teach people. So now, it's not just you and me making these videos because you and me are doing it for fun. Now you and I are doing this for, yeah, this is for serious. So what we're doing is we're teaching people how to grow their own food and how to live sustainably, how to live independently without having to use all kinds of electricity, without having to use all kinds of fossil fuels, all kinds of, propane and gas in the house and that kind of stuff, and how to save water. So when everything that I do here, when I clean up, whether it's I wash myself, I wash the dishes, I wash whatever, all the water that I use for washing then goes into the garden. So none of it gets wasted. And the water that goes into the garden gets used for some other reason first before the plants get it. So the water has to work for me more than once. We're trying to make things as closed of a system as possible and to live as much off of the land here as we can without using too many resources. And so that's what I'm teaching people with Learn and Grow now. That's what you're helping me teach people to do. So, but at the same time, I'm teaching you. So when I teach you, you and I teach other people, which is very cool. And so now you're part of the solution. You're part of us helping the world be a better place for people and help people learn how to take care of themselves. Because what happens when there's no food in the store?
They have to survive on their own.
Exactly. And what happens
and
when
people don't know how to make their own food or how to start a fire, that's what this show is about.
Yes, that we're teaching people how to do things for themselves so that they can survive even if the stores can't give them what they need. Or even if the stores have what they need, what happens if they don't have enough money to buy it? And there's, no way to get it for free. Then they've got to find another way to make it happen. And so this is about not having to depend on somebody else. This is about being able to do it yourself. And so that's what you're helping me do. So what we're going to do today is one of the really important things about growing your own food is cooking it. And we're not going to cook anything from the garden today, but we are going to use eggs from the chickens.
Okay, so that means you're going to go collect the eggs? Huh?
Well, I've already collected the eggs. I have them right here because Quiet Riot gives me an egg almost every day, and I've got 2 little eggs in here of hers right now. So we're going to use those to cook with, and I've got all the ingredients out, but there's some stuff that I want to talk about with you first, just to explain how everything works, and then we're going to do it. And then you're going to see it in action. You're going to see everything I just explained. You're going to look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's it. That's what she was talking about. And then it's going to make sense to you, and then you're going to be able to explain it to other people. So there's a couple of things that we want to talk about. And I made these ahead of time so that we could do this this way.
Questions.
Well, okay, so this is like holding things, it's like visuals, right?
Yeah.
So basically what this is saying, and I'll do this for the camera here, but this is mostly for you, is that when you're making heat, when you're making fire,
You will need some air.
You need air, you need oxygen, you need fuel, which is whatever is going to burn, and you need heat to get it started.
Like a match.
A match or a lighter or some sort of heat source.
Yeah.
So, and
or
then
like using a rock and twig, which is pretty much the main thing to make a fire.
Well, that would be friction, because when you rub them together, what happens when you rub your hands together really fast? Do they get hot?
Yes. It's really hot.
That's friction. So what happens when you rub a stick in a rock like that is you're making that kind of friction, only it gets so hot. It makes little embers, and then you can use those embers to catch something else on fire. That kind of fire starting is something you do when you're in a survival situation where you're desperate and you don't have a lighter and you don't have a match and you could freeze to death or starve to death if you don't have a fire. So that's a survival skill. We don't really need to do that now because we have lighters, we have tools that help us create flame. So today we're going to cook with the stove because it's the same thing. It's just done differently.
Yes, and it's made differently than what that.
Exactly. So we're going to do fire two different ways, and the first way we're going to do it is today with the blue stove,
and then the next time we'll
do it in the fireplace. Exactly. So this shows you how you do it in the fireplace, right? When you're making a fire with wood, you've got big sticks and you've got little sticks and you've got medium sticks,
which are like 3 different types of sizes.
3 different sizes, and then sometimes you'll have paper and other stuff that catches on fire more easily than like a big stick of wood. When you have a big thick log, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Well, basically what you're saying is you've got all these molecules of the wood, and they're all squished together to make this hard thing. And there's not gaps in between the molecules where air is passing through very easily, or you'd be able to see through it, right?
Yeah.
It would be full of holes. So the more hard something is, the closer all the molecules are together, which means it's harder for air to slip in between the molecules, right? Because they're all squished together. So when you have a hard big stick of wood, it's much harder for it to catch on fire because you need oxygen.
Yes, and sometimes you need oxygen.
And you need the oxygen to swirl around what you're trying to burn to feed the fire, because you need the fuel and the oxygen to make the fire go.
Like it's water and food. Like what us humans.
Exactly. We have to fuel our bodies with what we need, and what we need is water and food. But for the fire, it needs fuel and oxygen. Exactly. So when you do it with little sticks, it doesn't take as much fire to make as much heat to get them started, to make them burst into flame.
Yeah, like maybe just a spark.
Right. So like if you have dry grass, that's what makes wildfires so dangerous, because just a spark on dry grass, that grass will just ignite.
And fire's most dangerous enemy is water, because it can actually I don't know what.
It depends. It depends on the situation. Water does not always help with a fire, because you can actually
need
have
a fire extinguisher.
Yes, and we actually have one here for exactly that reason. It's down around the corner over there. Oil floats on top of water. So if you throw water on top of a burning grease fire, all it does is make the burning grease splatter. And now you've got, it splatters everywhere and catches everything on fire. When you have an oil fire, you don't throw water. That's dangerous. You put a lid on top of it. Like if you have a pan full of grease that catches on fire, you put the lid on top of it, because what does that take away? Oxygen. If you take away the oxygen, there's nothing to burn. It can't.
Yes, because fire needs oxygen.
Fires breathe. They need air to breathe. So
just like us humans.
And we have to have oxygen in our bodies to burn our energy as well. It's just we do it a different way. So with the stove, what you have is you have these burners right here. See how the black thing sticks up and the pan sits on top of it?
Yeah.
You can see how air can move around in there, right?
Yes.
It creates space for air. So there's air circulation, but you still need the heat all right there, and the fire and the fuel all right there, so it can burn, right? You can see here in this drawing that you have a fuel canister that goes inside the stove, and I'll show you how that works in a second. And then you have the burner that has all these little holes in it where the gas, which is the fuel, can escape and come through the holes, okay? And then you have this little bit right here called called piezoelectric ignition. It's a little ignition switch, and what it does is it throws a little electrical spark. And the spark flies into the field of the gas, it catches it on fire. And then the fire goes all the way around, all the places where the gas is coming out of the holes. It all catches on fire. because they're right next door to each other. And so the spark gets the first bit of it started, and then all of it circles around, and the gas, so long as gas continues to come out of the holes, then it will continue to burn. So that means you have to have something that holds the canister open, like when you're pushing on the top of a hairspray can, or on top of like a can of Pam, like you spray.
Like a can that has hair dye in it. 'Cause
Yeah.
some cans have hair dye.
Yes, a spray can, like our spray paint. You have to hold the button down to keep the stuff coming out, right?
Yes.
So what this stove does is it has a thing inside that holds it's like holding the button down all the time. And the gas just keeps coming out and keeps burning until you use up all the gas in the canister, and then you've got to replace the canister. You have to put a new can of fuel in there because you use it all up. So it's like putting gas in your car. It burns it up, and then you've got to replace it. You've got to put more in. And so every kind of fire needs a fuel. Every kind of fire needs oxygen. And every kind of fire needs a heat source to get it started. So if you look at both ways of doing it, in both instances you've got oxygen, fuel, and heat coming together to make fire. And what you'll notice when we make the fire in the fireplace next time is it burns like a yellow, red, orangey hot. The fire becomes reddish and orangish and yellowish, but when we burn the gas coming out of the stove, it's blue. It depends on what is burning as to what fuel you're using. The fuel determines the color of the flame.